The Galactic Council building stretched high into the purple sky of Centrian Prime, its crystal walls reflecting the light of 3 suns. Inside the massive structure, thousands of different alien species worked together, managing trade routes, settling disputes, and keeping peace across the galaxy. Each species had their special talents that made them useful to the Council. The Vorthic were the best at math and numbers. Their large heads could calculate complex problems in seconds. The Quillians made beautiful art and music that could make anyone cry with joy. The Xanthari were perfect diplomats who could talk anyone into agreement without a single harsh word. Every species had their place, their role, and their level of skill that never changed much. Senior Assessor Vextile was a Thylorian, a tall blue creature with 4 arms and eyes that could see in many different colors. He had been evaluating new species for the Galactic Council for over 40 years. His job was simple but important. Figure out what each new species was good at and where they would fit in the galaxy's big system. Today, Vextal sat at his floating desk looking through files about the newest applicants to join the council. The species was called humans, and they came from a small blue planet called Earth in a quiet corner of the galaxy. He picked up their application files with 2 of his 4 hands and began to read. The test results were not impressive. Humans scored average in mathematics, below average in artistic ability, and just okay in diplomatic skills. Their technology was working, but nothing special. Their military was small and used basic weapons. Their society had some problems, but was mostly stable. Vextal had seen these kinds of results many times before. He made notes on his crystal tablet. With his 3rd hand, while his 4th hand reached for his morning drink. Standard mid-level species, he wrote. No outstanding abilities detected. Suitable for basic membership with routine work assignments. Classification: Tier 3 General Purpose. Adorda's office made a soft chime sound. "Come in," Vextal called out, not looking up from his work. Ambassador Taeho Kim walked into the office, followed by Deputy Ambassador Haijin Park. Both humans wore simple, dark blue uniforms with small Earth symbols on their shoulders. They looked nervous but tried to hide it with polite smiles. Taeho was a man of average height with black hair and kind eyes. He had studied many languages and cultures his whole life, preparing for this moment when humanity might join the galactic community. Haijin was shorter with long black hair tied back neatly. She was an expert in alien psychology and had spent years learning about different species. "Senior Assessor Vextal," Taeho said with a careful bow. "Thank you for meeting with us today. We are honored by your time and attention." Vextal finally looked up from his files. His 4 eyes focused on the 2 humans standing before his desk. They looked fragile compared to most species he dealt with. No thick skin, no natural weapons, no special physical abilities that he could see. "Sit down," Vextal said, pointing to 2 chairs with one of his arms. "I have reviewed your species application and test results. The Council will accept humanity for basic membership. You will be assigned standard work duties in various departments." Haijin's eyes lit up with excitement, but she kept her voice calm and professional. "We are very grateful for this opportunity. Our people are eager to contribute to galactic peace and cooperation." "Yes, well," Vextal said, already turning back to his files. "Your skills are adequate for routine tasks. Nothing remarkable, but acceptable. Personnel Director Kethvil will assign your people to appropriate positions tomorrow." Taeho and Haijin exchanged quick glances. This was not exactly the warm welcome they had hoped for, but it was acceptance. That was what mattered most. "Thank you, Senior Assessor," Taeho said. "May I ask what kinds of work our people might be doing?" Vextal picked up another file without looking at them. Basic agricultural planning, simple engineering maintenance, junior diplomatic correspondence, standard assignments for new species. Nothing too challenging until you prove yourselves capable of more complex work. The humans nodded politely and left the office. As they walked down the long crystal hallway, Haijin whispered to Taeho, "He thinks we are boring." "Maybe that is good," Taeho replied quietly. "No one will expect much from us." "That could be useful someday." 3 days later, Du Yun Lee sat at his new desk in the agricultural planning department. He was a practical man who had grown up on a farm before becoming an engineer. The work was simple: calculate how much food different colonies needed and plan shipping schedules. The computer did most of the math. He just had to check the numbers and approve the plans. His supervisor was a Quillian named Yorthan who looked like a giant butterfly with beautiful silver wings. Very simple work, Yorthan explained in his musical voice. The computer knows what to do. You just make sure everything looks correct. No problems should happen, Du-Yun nodded and smiled. The work was indeed very easy. But as he looked through the files, he noticed some things that seemed odd. Some colonies were getting too much food while others were getting too little. The computer was making small mistakes that no one was catching. In another part of the building, Bioram Choi was learning her new job in basic engineering maintenance. She was a smart woman who had designed spacecraft engines back on Earth. But here she was assigned to fix broken air filters and check power levels in small systems. Her supervisor was a Vorthik named Quexler, whose large head was covered in equations and formulas that glowed softly on his skin. Simple repairs only, he told her. Follow the manual exactly. Do not try to improve anything. Everything works the way it should work. Ram looked at the manual he handed her. It was thick and detailed, with step-by-step instructions for every possible repair. But as she read through it, she saw ways to make the systems work better. Small improvements that could save energy and prevent future problems. Across the city, Wu Jin Song was starting his job in junior diplomatic correspondence. He had been a translator and cultural expert on Earth, working with many different countries and cultures. Here, his job was to write simple letters between species about basic trade agreements and meeting schedules. His supervisor was a Zathari named Velthara who moved like water and spoke in perfect formal sentences. Accuracy is most important, she told him. Use only approved language patterns. Do not add personal opinions or creative solutions. Everything must follow exact protocols. Wujin nodded and began his work. The letters were indeed simple and formal. But as he wrote them, he noticed that many small misunderstandings could be avoided with just a few different words or explanations. The approved language was correct but sometimes unclear. All across the Galactic Council, humans were taking their new jobs and learning the rules. They were polite, hardworking, and followed instructions carefully. Their supervisors wrote reports saying the humans were adequate and acceptable for basic work. Assessor Vextal read these reports with satisfaction. Another new species properly classified and assigned. The humans would do their simple jobs, cause no problems, and slowly earn more responsibilities over many years. It was the normal way things worked in the galaxy, but Vextal did not know about the small things the humans were noticing, the tiny improvements they wanted to make, the better ways they saw to solve problems. He did not know that Du-Yun, Bo, Ram, Wu Jin, and all the other humans were quietly learning the galaxy's systems and seeing how they could work better. The galaxy had accepted humanity as just another average species. No one expected anything special from them. No one was watching for signs of hidden abilities or unusual potential. And that was exactly how the first great surprise would begin. 6 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The humans had settled into their routine jobs without causing any problems. Their supervisors were satisfied with their work, though no one was particularly impressed. Everything seemed normal and peaceful. Then the emergency alarm rang through the council building. Du-Yun Lee looked up from his desk in the agricultural planning department as red lights flashed on the walls. The gentle hum of the building systems was replaced by urgent beeping sounds. Around him, alien workers stopped what they were doing and looked worried. His supervisor Yorthan flew over to his desk, his silver wings beating fast with nervousness. Big problem in Kepler sector, the butterfly-like alien said in his musical voice. Solar flare hit the main shipping route. Very bad. 12 colonies need food and medicine, but ships cannot get through. Du-Yun felt his heart start beating faster. How bad is it? Computer says only 47% chance of successful delivery using normal methods, Yorthan replied, his wings shaking. Maybe 15,000 people will die from hunger and sickness if we cannot find better way. Across the building, Bioram Choi heard the same alarm in the engineering department. Her supervisor Quexler was staring at his glowing equations with 4 eyes wide with panic. Transport ships are damaged, he said, his large head turning different colors as he thought hard. Engines failing, shields broken, navigation systems. Confused by radiation? Normal repair methods will take too long. In the diplomatic correspondence office, Wu Jin-song watched as Velthara moved like nervous water around the room. Must coordinate with 17 different species, she said, her perfect voice now tight with stress. Each has different ships, different languages, different emergency protocols. Very complex, very difficult. The crisis was bigger than anything the Council had faced in recent years. The Kepler sector's main star had produced a massive solar flare that sent dangerous radiation through space. This radiation had knocked out the primary shipping lane that supplied 12 colonies with everything they needed to survive. Emergency Director Zalthric called a meeting of all department heads. The large reptilian alien stood at the front of the main conference room, his scales dark with worry. "We have 72 hours, he announced to the room full of anxious aliens. After that, people start dying. Computer models show low success rate with standard procedures. Department supervisors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Vorthek mathematicians were calculating frantically, but kept getting the same bad numbers. Aquilian artists had no songs or paintings that could help with this kind of problem. Even the Zenthari diplomats seemed lost, unsure how to negotiate with deadly radiation and broken machines. "We need volunteers," Emergency Director Zalthric said. "Any department willing to try new approaches. Time is running out." A small voice spoke up from the back of the room. "My team can try." Everyone turned to look. Du Yun Lee stood up slowly, his human face calm but his eyes bright with something that looked like excitement instead of fear. "The agricultural planning department has some humans who might be able to help." Yorthan fluttered his wings in surprise. "Du Yun, this is much bigger than normal food planning. Very dangerous, very complex." "I know," Du Yun said simply. "But we can try." Emergency Director Zalthric looked confused. "Humans? But your species is rated for basic tasks only. This requires advanced problem-solving under extreme pressure." "Let us try," Du Yun repeated. "If we fail, you can use the backup plans." After a moment of silence, the director nodded. "Very well. You have 72 hours." As the meeting ended, Du Yun walked quickly through the building, gathering other humans. He found Bioram in the engineering department and Wu Jin in diplomatic correspondence. He also collected Mi Young Kong, a Korean woman who worked as a council coordinator and had been assigned to watch human activities. "Big emergency," Du Yun explained as they gathered in a small conference room. 12 colonies are going to run out of food and medicine, radiation blocking normal shipping routes. We need to find a new way. Bioram looked at the technical reports and felt something strange happening in her mind. The numbers and diagrams that had seemed complicated before now appeared clear and simple. "The ships are damaged but not destroyed," she said, speaking faster than usual. "If we reroute power from non-essential systems, we can boost the shields enough to get through the radiation." Wu Jin was already pulling up communication systems. 17 species means 17 different emergency languages and protocols, he said, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. "But there are common patterns. If I can create a simplified command system." Mi Young watched in amazement as the 3 humans began working. Something was happening to them that she had never seen before. Their movements became faster and more precise. Their voices grew more confident. Their eyes seemed brighter and more focused. Du Dajyun spread out star charts on the table, his mind racing through possibilities. "Normal shipping lane is blocked? But what about the asteroid field in Sector 7? Ships avoid it because it's dangerous, but if we calculate the orbits carefully, that would cut travel time by 30%. Boram said immediately, not even looking at the charts. Somehow she could see the solution in her head. And if we modify the engines to run at higher efficiency, ... The humans worked through the night. Young stayed with them, taking notes and bringing them food and coffee. She watched as they solved problems that had stumped the galaxy's best experts. But the strangest thing was how they seemed to get better as the situation got worse. When the first ships reported engine failures, Boram designed new repair procedures in minutes. When diplomatic communications broke down between arguing species, Wu Jin created a new translation protocol that had everyone working together in hours. When Du Yun's complex shipping routes seemed impossible to follow, he simplified them into clear, easy steps that any pilot could understand. "They are working for 60 hours straight," Mi Young wrote in her report. "No sleep, very little food. Other species would be collapsing from exhaustion. But humans seem to be getting stronger and smarter as pressure increases." On the second day, reports came in from the emergency zone. Ships were getting through the radiation using Boram's shield modifications. Different species were working together using Wu Jin's communication system. Supplies were reaching the colonies faster than anyone had thought possible using Du Yun's new routes. "Impossible?" said Emergency Director Zalthric as he looked at the latest numbers. "Success rate is now 94%. How are they doing?" "This?" Mi Young looked at the three humans, who were still working at full speed despite not sleeping for over 60 hours. Du Yun was talking to ship captains in 4 different languages. Boram was solving engineering problems that normally took teams of experts days to figure out. Wu Jin was coordinating supply deliveries across multiple star systems without making a single mistake. "I do not know," Mi Young said honestly, "but they are saving thousands of lives." When the crisis finally ended, over 14,000 people had been saved. The supply delivery mission was declared the most successful emergency operation in Council history. The 3 humans had accomplished what teams of specialized experts had said was impossible. As Du Yun, Boram, and Wu Jin finally sat down to rest, they looked tired but satisfied. The other council workers stared at them with confusion and new respect. "How did you do that?" Yorthan asked Du Yun, his silver wings still trembling with amazement. Du Yun thought for a moment, then shrugged. "When things got really bad, everything just became clearer. Like our minds worked better when we needed them most." Mi Young finished writing her report, but she was not sure anyone would believe it. How could she explain that humans seemed to improve under pressure instead of getting worse? How could she describe the way they had transformed from average workers into brilliant problem solvers when faced with an impossible situation? She decided to send the report anyway. Someone needed to know what she had witnessed. Someone needed to understand that humanity might be much more than they appeared to be. The galaxy was about to learn its first lesson about humans, when everything was falling apart, when time was running out, when normal solutions failed completely. That was exactly when humans became extraordinary. News of the Kepler sector rescue spread through the Galactic Council like ripples in water. Aliens who had never paid attention to humans before began asking questions. How had 3 average workers solved a crisis that had stumped the galaxies? Best experts? How had they worked for 3 days without sleep and gotten better instead of worse? Dr. the Jinro was one of the people asking these questions. She was a xenopsychologist, which meant she studied how different alien minds worked. Her office was filled with brain scans, behavioral charts, and thick books about every known species in the galaxy. She had spent her whole career understanding why each species thought and acted the way they did. The report from Mi Young Kong landed on Dr. the Jin's desk on a quiet Tuesday morning. She read it 3 times before she believed what it said. According to the report, humans had not just solved an impossible problem. They had actually gotten smarter and more capable as the pressure increased. "This cannot be right," Dr. the Jin said to herself, staring at her computer screen. Every species she had ever studied worked the same way. They had a certain level of ability that stayed mostly the same, Under stress, that ability went down, not up. It was one of the basic laws of galactic psychology. She picked up her communication device and called the Council Research Department. "I need permission to study the human anomaly," she said when Director Voshtal answered. Director Voshtal was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and very long arms. "What anomaly?" he asked in his deep voice. "The humans who solved the Kepler crisis. I want to test them under controlled conditions. Something strange happened during that emergency, and I need to understand what it was." "You think there was an error in the reports?" "I think," Dr. the Jinn said carefully, "that we might not understand humans as well as we thought we did." 2 weeks later, Dr. the Jinn had permission for her study and 2 human volunteers. Jaehyun Nam was a quiet man who worked in the council's transportation department. He had average test scores and seemed very normal in every way. Yoonji Lim was a medical technician who had joined the council just a month earlier. She was smart but nothing special according to her files. Dr. the Jinn explained the test to them in her laboratory. "I want to see how you perform under different levels of stress. We will start with easy problems and make them harder and more urgent. Is that okay?" Both humans nodded. They seemed relaxed and friendly, just like their psychological profiles said they would be. The first tests were simple. Dr. the Jinn gave them puzzles to solve, math problems to work out, and pattern recognition exercises. She measured how fast they worked, how accurate they were, and how their brains looked on the scanning machines. Jaehyun and Eunji performed exactly as expected. Their scores were average, just like all the other humans who had been tested before. Dr. the Jinn began to wonder if Mi Young's report had been wrong. Then she made the tests harder and added time pressure. "You have 10 minutes to solve these tactical problems," she told Jaehyun, showing him a complex military simulation on the computer screen. "Enemy forces are attacking a space station. You must coordinate the defense." As the timer counted down and simulated battles raged on the screen, something incredible happened. Jaehyun's movements became faster and more precise. His eyes grew brighter and more focused. The scanning machines showed his brain activity increasing in ways Dr. the Jinn had never seen before. In 10 minutes, Jaehyun had not only saved the space station but had defeated the enemy forces completely. His tactical analysis was brilliant, using strategies that took most military experts years to learn. "How did you do that?" Dr. the Jinn asked, staring at the test results. Jaehyun looked surprised. "I don't know." When the timer started and the battles got intense, everything just became clear. I could see all the possibilities at once. Dr. the Jinn turned to Yoonji for the medical simulation. "You are in a hospital during a plague outbreak," she explained. "Hundreds of patients are arriving. You must diagnose and treat them quickly or they will die." The simulation began with a few patients, then dozens, then hundreds. Alarms rang constantly. Virtual doctors and nurses ran around screaming for help. The computer created chaos and panic that would overwhelm most medical professionals, but as the crisis got worse, Yoonji got better. Her diagnostic accuracy jumped from 73% to 97%. She began seeing patterns and symptoms that the computer's own medical AI had missed. Her hands moved over the controls like she had been doing emergency medicine for decades instead of months. "Impossible," Dr. the Jinn whispered, watching the test results. "Under this level of stress, performance should decrease by at least 40%. But their abilities are improving dramatically." She ran more tests over the following weeks. Each time, the same pattern appeared. Under normal conditions, humans performed at average galactic levels. But as pressure increased, as time ran out, as situations became desperate, their capabilities grew stronger. Dr. the Jinn discovered that human brains work differently than any other species she had studied. While other aliens had stable neural pathways that could be overloaded by stress, humans had flexible pathways that actually strengthened under pressure. She measured their hormone levels and found chemicals she had never seen before. She scanned their nervous systems and discovered connections that formed and reformed rapidly during crisis situations. She tested their reflexes and watched them speed up when danger increased. "This is revolutionary," she said to her research assistant, a young Quillian named Morthvia. "Humans have evolved a completely different response to stress. Instead of breaking down, they optimize." Morthvia looked at the test data with his large compound eyes. "But how is this possible? What kind of evolution would create such a thing?" "Doctor." The Jinn thought about everything she knew about human history. Their planet Earth was known for being dangerous and unstable. Ice ages, volcanoes, earthquakes, storms, predators, diseases. Humans had survived crisis after crisis for millions of years. "Maybe," she said slowly, "they evolved on a world where only the ones who got better under pressure could survive." She wrote up her findings and prepared to present them to the Council Science Committee. The committee was led by senior scientist Sung-Ho Beek, a human who had been working for the council for several months. Dr. Li Jin thought he would be excited to hear about her discoveries. She was wrong. "Impossible," Sung-Ho said firmly when she finished her presentation. "No species improves under adverse conditions. Your testing methods must be flawed." Dr. Li Jin looked around the room at the other committee members. They were all nodding in agreement with Sung-Ho. A few looked annoyed that their time had been wasted. "But I have documented proof," she said, showing them brain scans and performance charts. "The data clearly shows data can be misinterpreted," interrupted Dr. Kelthmer, a Vorthag scientist whose equations glowed bright red with irritation. "What you describe violates basic principles of stress response. Under pressure, all biological systems experience decreased efficiency." "Maybe. Humans are different," Dr. Li Jin suggested. "Humans are classified as Tier 3 general purpose," said Dr. Yinfala, a Zentheri researcher. "Average in all categories. They cannot suddenly become exceptional simply because they are stressed." Sung-Ho leaned back in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "Dr. Li Jin, I appreciate your effort, but you are suggesting that my own species has hidden abilities that we never knew about." "That seems unlikely." Dr. Li Jin gathered her papers and data files. "What if I am right? What if humans really do perform better under pressure? Then," said Dr. Kelthmer with mathematical certainty, "we would have noticed it during their initial evaluations. Since we did not, your hypothesis must be incorrect." As Dr. Li Jin left the meeting, she felt frustrated but not defeated. The science committee might not believe her, but she knew what she had seen. Humans were not average at all. They were something entirely new, a species that thrived on the very thing that destroyed others. She decided to continue her research quietly. Somewhere in the galaxy, another crisis would happen. And when it did, she would be watching to see what humans could really do when everything was on the line. The galaxy still thought humans were ordinary. But Dr. Li Jin knew the truth was much more extraordinary than anyone realized. The war began without warning on a cold morning in the Outer Rim territories. Long-range sensors detected massive ships appearing from nowhere, their dark hulls cutting through space like knives through silk. The ships belonged to the Andraxian Empire, a hostile alien civilization that had been contained beyond the galaxy's edge for over a century, but these were not the same Andraxian ships that the Galactic Council remembered. These new vessels moved through space in ways that seemed impossible. They passed through energy shields like the shields were not there. Their weapons ignored armor plating that should have stopped any known technology. Their attack patterns made no sense according to traditional military thinking. In the Council's main war room, Strategic Commander Hyun-Woo Park stared at the tactical displays with growing horror. 3 major battles had already been fought, and the Council forces had lost all of them badly. Ships that had never been defeated were being destroyed in minutes. Military tactics that had worked for thousands of years were useless against these new Andraxian strategies. Commander Hyun-Woo was a human who had worked his way up through the Council military over several months. He was considered competent, but not brilliant. His strategies were solid but not creative. His leadership was steady but not inspiring. He was exactly the kind of average commander that humanity was known for producing. Beside him stood Fleet Admiral Do-Yoon Shin, another human who commanded a small group of Council starships. She had a reputation for being careful and following regulations exactly. Her fleet had never lost a battle, but they had never faced anything like the Andraxians either. "Show me the battle reports again," Commander Hyun-woo said to the tactical computer. The holographic display lit up with images from the 3 failed battles. In each case, the Council's finest military minds had used their best strategies and most advanced technology. The Thylorian commanders had calculated perfect battle formations. The Vorthak strategists had run thousands of mathematical simulations. The Zenthari admirals had tried diplomatic solutions while fighting. All of them had failed completely. The Andraxians are using some kind of new technology, reported Intelligence Officer Kevter, a 6-armed alien covered in sensors. Their ships phase through our shields using unknown energy fields. Their weapons seem to predict where our ships will be and fire at those locations before we arrive there. Fleet Admiral Do-Yoon looked at the tactical data with worried eyes. It is like they can see the future. They know what we are going to do before we do it. Worse than that, added Strategic Commander Hyun-woo. Their attack patterns are completely chaotic. No formation, no strategy, no logic. Our computers cannot predict what they will do next because they are not following any rules. War Director Zelfmus, a massive reptilian alien with scales like armor, turned to address the room full of military officers. "We need new strategies. The old ways are not working. Who can suggest alternatives?" The room fell silent. The galaxy's best military minds had no answers. Everything they had learned about warfare was useless against an enemy that ignored all the rules and used impossible technology. Commander Hyun-woo felt something stirring in his chest. A strange feeling that grew stronger as the situation became more hopeless. Around him, other officers were panicking, but he found his mind becoming clearer and more focused. "I have an idea," he said quietly. War Director Zelfmas looked at him with surprise. "Commander Park, your species is not known for innovative military thinking. Are you certain you can contribute something useful?" "Let me try," Hyun-woo said. "Give me a small fleet and permission to engage the Andraxians. If I fail, you can court-martial me later." Admiral Do-Yoon stepped forward. "I volunteer my ships for Commander Park's mission. Whatever he is planning, I will support it." The war director considered this for a long moment. Traditional strategies had failed completely. Maybe it was time to try something different, even if it came from an average human commander. "Very well," he said finally. "You have 12 ships and 72 hours. Try not to get them all destroyed." 2 days later, Commander Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the Council cruiser Seoul's Pride. Captain Min Ho-young, the ship's commanding officer, was preparing his crew for what everyone expected to be a suicide mission. The ship was small compared to most Council vessels, with a crew of only 200 humans and a few alien advisors. "Are you sure about this plan?" Captain Minho asked as they approached the Andraxian battle zone. "We are outnumbered 20 to 1. Commander Hyun-woo looked at the tactical display showing enemy ships scattered across space in seemingly random patterns. Instead of feeling afraid, he felt energized. His mind was working faster than it ever had before, seeing connections and possibilities that had been invisible just hours earlier. "Trust me," he said, "and be ready for anything." The battle began when Andraxian ships suddenly appeared around the small human fleet. Their weapons charged with deadly energy while their hulls shimmered with the strange phase technology that made them nearly impossible to hit. On the bridge of Seoul's Pride, Navigation Officer Subin Ken felt her heart racing as enemy fire erupted around them. But instead of panic, she felt a strange clarity. The asteroid field that had seemed impossible to navigate now looked like a 3-dimensional puzzle she could solve in her head. "I can get us through," she announced, her fingers flying over the navigation controls. "Follow my lead." The small ship dove into the asteroid field at speeds that should have been suicidal. Subin guided them between spinning rocks and through narrow passages that no computer would have attempted. Behind them, larger Andraxian ships tried to follow but crashed into asteroids or got lost in the maze of floating stone in the weapons bay. Specialist Chang Min-yu was facing his own crisis. The ship's main guns had been damaged by enemy fire, and normal repair procedures would take hours they did not have. But as explosions rocked the ship around him, his mind began working in ways it never had before. "I can fix this," he said to his repair team, "but we need to do it differently." Instead of following the repair manual, Changmin began connecting damaged systems in new ways. He jury-rigged power cables and rerouted energy flows using methods that should not have worked. Somehow, his improvised repairs made the weapons better than they had been originally. "Weapons back online," he reported to the bridge. "And they are hitting twice as hard as before." In the communication center, Officer Nare Kim was trying to coordinate with 11 other ships, while enemy jamming filled the radio channels with noise and confusion. 7 different species were trying to talk at once in different languages, while Andraxian signals interfered with everything. As the battle grew more chaotic, Nara found herself understanding patterns in the chaos. She began switching between languages and frequencies so fast that her alien assistants could not keep up. Somehow, she was keeping all 12 ships working together despite impossible communication conditions. "All ships follow Soul's Pride," she broadcast in 6 languages simultaneously. "New attack pattern Exeta 7. Execute immediately." Commander Hyan Wu watched the battle develop with growing excitement. His original plan had been simple, but as the fighting continued, he found himself adapting and improving it in real time. Every time the Andraxians tried something new, he had a counter-strategy, ready before they finished their attack. The small human fleet began moving through the enemy formation, like they could predict what the Andraxians would do next. When enemy ships tried to use their phase technology, the humans were already firing at where they would reappear. When Andraxian commanders attempted their chaotic attack patterns, human ships responded with equally chaotic but more effective maneuvers. For the first time since the war began, Andraxian ships were being destroyed faster than Council ships. After 6 hours of fighting, the impossible happened. The Andraxian fleet retreated, leaving behind wreckage and valuable intelligence about their new technology. "Mission accomplished," Captain Minho reported to Council headquarters. "Enemy force defeated, intelligence gathered. Minimal casualties on our side." The response from headquarters was silence for several long minutes. Finally, War Director Zelfmas came on the communication channel. "Explain how you accomplished this, Commander Park." Han Wu thought about the question. How could he explain that as the battle became more desperate, his mind had worked better and faster? How could he describe the way his crew had performed? Impossible feats when everything seemed hopeless? "When everything went wrong," he said finally, "everything became clear. We stopped trying to fight the way everyone else fights and started fighting the way the situation required." The galaxy was about to learn that when conventional warfare failed, when impossible enemies used impossible tactics, when traditional military thinking was useless, that was exactly when humans became the most dangerous opponents anyone had ever faced. The news of humanity's victory against the Andraxians spread across the galaxy faster than light-speed communication. For the first time in the war, a Council fleet had not just survived an encounter with the enemy, but had actually won decisively. The impossible had happened, and everyone wanted to know how. Within days of the battle, requests began pouring into the Council's Human Resources Department. Species that had barely noticed humans before were now asking specifically for human advisors, consultants, and team members. The requests were not for simple jobs anymore. They wanted humans for their most difficult and dangerous problems. Dr. Ji Hai On was working in the Council's Medical Research Division when the first request arrived. She was a quiet woman who specialized in studying diseases that affected multiple species. Her work was important but not particularly exciting. She spent most of her time looking through microscopes and reading research papers, The request came from the Corvani Homeworld Health Ministry. For over 100 years, a mysterious disease called the Red Plague had been slowly killing the Corvani people. The galaxy's best doctors and researchers had tried everything they could think of, but the disease continued to spread. Traditional treatments did not work. New medicines failed. Even the most advanced medical technology could only slow the disease down, not stop it. "They want me specifically?" Dr. Jihai asked her supervisor, Dr. Velfin, a tall alien with silver skin and 3 brains. "Yes," Dr. Velfin replied, looking confused. "They say they heard about human performance during crisis situations. The Red Plague is getting worse and they are desperate for new ideas." Dr. Jihai had never worked on anything as challenging as the Red Plague. But something about the urgency of the situation made her feel excited rather than worried. "I will need access to all their research data and permission to try experimental approaches." "Granted," Dr. Velfin said. "But are you certain you can succeed where others have failed?" "I do not know," Dr. Jihai answered honestly, "but I want to try." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, engineer Sang-wook-oh received an even more challenging request. The core worlds of 3 major star systems were experiencing infrastructure failures that threatened billions of lives. Power grids were collapsing, water systems were failing, and transportation networks were breaking down all at the same time. Sang-wook had been working on simple maintenance projects for the Council, fixing small problems and following standard repair procedures. Now he was being asked to redesign the basic systems that kept entire worlds functioning. "This is impossible," said his Vortex supervisor, Korthaval, whose mathematical equations were glowing bright orange with stress. "These infrastructure systems were designed by teams of thousands of experts over decades of work. One engineer cannot fix them in the time available." Sang-wook looked at the technical specifications for 3 different worlds, each with unique problems and requirements. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt energized. "Give me full access to the design databases and emergency authorization to make changes." "You realize," Korthaval said carefully, "that if you fail, billions of people will die?" "Then I cannot fail," Sang-wook replied simply, but it was Ambassador Tae-ho Kim's assignment that would prove to be the most crucial test of human abilities under pressure. The Andraxian War was not going well despite the early victory. Battles continued across multiple sectors and casualties were mounting on both sides. The galaxy desperately needed a peaceful solution, but the Andraxians had refused all previous diplomatic attempts. A peace conference was scheduled on the neutral world of Harmony Station. The Andraxian Empire agreed to send representatives, but only for one final attempt at negotiation. If these talks failed, the war would continue until one side was completely destroyed. Ambassador Tae-ho had been chosen to lead the Council's diplomatic team, working with translator Eugene Seo and cultural specialist Dixien Su-jang. Together, they would face the most difficult negotiation in galactic history. "The Andraxians do not think like other species," explained Chief Diplomat Altharis as she briefed the human team. "They value strength over compromise, chaos over order, conquest over cooperation. Every previous attempt at peace has failed because we cannot understand their motivations." Tae-ho studied the files on Andraxian culture and history. Their civilization was built around constant warfare and territorial expansion. They saw diplomacy as weakness and negotiation as surrender. Finding common ground seemed impossible. "How much time do we have?" he asked. 7 days maximum," Altharis replied. "After that, their military commanders will overrule their diplomats and the war will resume." As these 3 critical missions began, something remarkable started happening. Word of human involvement spread through galactic news networks, led by correspondent Hae-won Cho. Her reports describe humans as crisis specialists and pressure performers who seemed to thrive when facing impossible challenges. Dr. Jihai arrived on the Corvani homeworld to find a planet in despair. The Red Plague had infected nearly 30% of the population, and traditional quarantine methods were failing. The disease seemed to adapt to every treatment. becoming stronger and more contagious with each passing month. But as Jihai studied the medical data under intense time pressure, her mind began working in ways it never had before. She saw patterns that other researchers had missed, connections that had been invisible to even the most advanced medical computers. "The disease is not one organism," she announced to the stunned Corvani medical team after working for 48 hours straight. "It is a symbiotic relationship between 3 different microorganisms that help each other survive. That is why single treatments fail." Working with desperate urgency as more patients arrived every hour, Jihai developed a revolutionary treatment approach. Instead of attacking the disease directly, her method disrupted the communication between the 3 organisms, causing them to compete with each other instead of cooperating. Engineer Sang-wook was facing his own desperate situation across the galaxy. The infrastructure failures were accelerating, and traditional repair methods were too slow to prevent catastrophic system collapses. But as the crisis deepened, Sang-wook found himself thinking about problems in completely new ways. Instead of trying to fix the existing systems, he began designing entirely new approaches that could be implemented quickly using available resources. "Impossible," said Corvani Chief Engineer Wexler as he watched Sang-wook's plans take shape. "You are suggesting we rebuild 3 planetary infrastructure systems in 2 weeks. The original construction took years." "Not rebuild," Sang-wook corrected, his hands moving rapidly over design interfaces. "Redesign. Make them simpler, more efficient, easier to maintain. Less can be more if you do it right." Working around the clock with teams of local engineers, Sang-wook created modular systems that could be manufactured quickly and installed, without shutting down existing infrastructure. His designs were revolutionary but practical, elegant but simple. At Harmony Station, Ambassador Taeho was facing the most challenging diplomatic crisis of his career. The Andraxian delegation, led by War Commander Threxnell, had arrived with demands that seemed designed to make peace impossible. "We will accept nothing less than complete surrender of 12-star systems," Threxnell declared in the opening session. "Your species will serve the Empire or be destroyed. These are our terms." The other council diplomats were ready to give up immediately. Such demands could never be accepted, and the Andraxians seemed uninterested in any compromise. But as the talks grew more heated and the situation became more hopeless, Taeho felt his diplomatic instincts sharpen and strengthen. He began to see possibilities that other negotiators had missed, approaches that no one else had considered. "What do you really want?" he asked Threxnell during a private meeting, speaking in fluent Andraxian, which surprised the war commander. "Victory," Threxnell replied simply. "And what does victory look like to your people? What would prove that the Empire is stronger than the Council?" For the first time in the negotiations, the Andraxian commander paused to think instead of making immediate demands. As the 3 missions continued under mounting pressure, the galaxy watched with growing amazement. Humans were not just surviving impossible challenges, they were succeeding in ways that defied explanation. The species that everyone had dismissed as average was proving to be anything but ordinary when the stakes were highest. Dr. The Jinro had been watching the reports from across the galaxy with growing excitement. 3 major human missions were happening at the same time, and each one was providing more evidence for her theories about human stress response. She had been right all along, but now she needed to prove it scientifically. Her research team had grown larger over the past months. Xenoneurologist Jun Seo Park had joined from the Medical University of Centrion Prime, bringing with him advanced brain scanning equipment. Biochemist So-Young Lee had transferred from the Galactic Health Institute with her expertise in analyzing alien hormone systems. Together, they were conducting the most comprehensive study of human psychology ever attempted. "The preliminary data is extraordinary," Genesio reported as he analyzed brain scans from human volunteers under stress. "Look at these neural pathway formations." On the holographic display, human brain activity looked like fireworks exploding in slow motion. Under normal conditions, different regions of the brain work separately, each handling its own tasks. But under pressure, new connections formed rapidly between areas that normally never communicated. The creative centers are linking directly to analytical regions, So Young observed, pointing to streams of light connecting different brain areas. Logic centers are networking with emotional processing. It is like the entire brain becomes one superconnected system. Dr. The Jin studied the scans with fascination. This explains the performance increases we observed. Under stress, humans do not just use their brains more efficiently. Their brains actually become more capable by creating new ways to process information. Meanwhile, she was monitoring the biochemical changes happening in humans during crisis situations. So Young had identified several unique chemicals that appeared in human bloodstreams only during high-pressure events. These compounds are unlike anything we have seen in other species. So Young explained, showing molecular diagrams on her computer screen. They seem to enhance memory formation, speed up reflexes, and improve pattern recognition all at the same time. Most interesting is this one, she said, highlighting a complex molecule. It appears to reduce the brain's normal safety limits. Other species have biological restrictions that prevent them from overexerting their mental capabilities. Humans seem to temporarily remove those restrictions when under extreme pressure. Junaseo was working with human volunteers to measure the extent of these changes. Military strategist In-ho Choi had agreed to participate in increasingly difficult tactical simulations while his brain activity was monitored in real time. Start the simulation. Junaseo instructed as In-ho sat in front of a complex holographic battle display. The test began with a simple scenario: defend a small outpost against enemy attack. In-ho's brain activity remained normal as he deployed defensive measures and coordinated his virtual troops. Then the simulation escalated. More enemies appeared. Critical systems began failing. Time pressure increased. Allied forces started requesting immediate assistance. As the crisis deepened, In-ho's brain scans showed remarkable changes. New neural pathways formed so quickly that the monitoring equipment could barely track them. His problem-solving speed increased dramatically while his stress levels paradoxically began to decrease. He's becoming calmer as the situation gets worse, Junaseo noted with amazement. His heart rate is actually slowing down even though the simulation is becoming more chaotic. In the simulation, In-ho was performing tactical miracles. He was coordinating 17 different unit types across multiple battlefields while simultaneously managing resource allocation and adapting to enemy strategies that changed every few minutes. His performance was better than seasoned military computers. How does it feel? Dr. The Jin asked when the test ended. In-ho thought for a moment. When everything started going wrong, it was like a switch flipped in my head. All the noise and confusion disappeared, and I could see exactly what needed to be done. The more impossible the situation became, the clearer the solutions appeared. Across the galaxy, the three major human missions were providing real-world examples of exactly what Dr. The Jin's team was discovering in the laboratory. Dr. Ji-hai On had been working on the Red Plague for 6 days straight with almost no sleep. The Corvani medical team watching her was amazed by what they were seeing. As the pressure mounted and more patients arrived in critical condition, Ji-hai's diagnostic abilities seemed to improve exponentially. She's identifying symptoms that our most advanced medical scanners miss, reported Chief Medical Officer Vikthari to the Corvani government. Her treatment protocols are revolutionary. We are seeing cure rates of over 90%, which should be impossible with this disease. Ji-hai had discovered that the Red Plague was actually 3 separate organisms working together in ways that no one had understood before. Her solution involved disrupting their cooperation by introducing a 4th organism that competed with all 3 simultaneously. Brilliant, said Dr. Morhevik, the galaxy's leading expert on infectious diseases, when he reviewed Ji-hai's work. Why did no one think of this approach before? Because, Ji-hai replied tiredly, no one was desperate enough to try something that should not work. Engineer Sang-wook Oh was achieving similar impossible results on the 3 failing worlds. Working under extreme time pressure as infrastructure systems collapsed around him, he was redesigning planetary networks in ways that veteran engineers said were impossible. "He is not following any standard procedures," reported Master Engineer Colthaver from the Velo system. "His designs violate established principles of structural engineering, but somehow they work better than anything we have ever built." Sangwook's modular infrastructure systems could be manufactured quickly using materials that were readily available on each world. His designs were simpler than traditional systems, but more flexible and easier to maintain. Traditional engineering focuses on perfect solutions, Sangwook explained to a group of confused alien engineers. But perfect solutions take too long to build. Good enough solutions that you can implement quickly are better than perfect solutions that arrive too late. At Harmony Station, Ambassador Taeho Kim was making the most remarkable progress of all. The Andraxian peace negotiations had been deadlocked for 5 days, with both sides making demands that the other could never accept. But as the deadline approached and war seemed inevitable, Taeho found diplomatic solutions that no one else had imagined. Working with translator Eugene Seo and cultural specialist Kyung-Soo Jang, he was slowly finding common ground between species that seemed to have nothing in common. "The Andraxians value strength and conquest," Taeho explained to the confused council delegation. "But they also value efficiency and practical results. We need to show them that cooperation achieves their goals better than warfare." Instead of trying to convince the Andraxians to become peaceful, Taeho was showing them how peace could make them stronger and more successful than continued fighting. "You want to expand your territory," he said to War Commander Threxnell during their private negotiations. "But expansion through conquest is expensive and inefficient. Expansion through alliance and trade gives you access to more resources with less risk." Threxnell was beginning to listen. For the first time in the negotiations, the Andraxian commander was asking questions instead of making demands. Back on Centrium Prime, Dr. Diem's team was analyzing data from all 3 missions in real time. The patterns were consistent across every human they studied. "It is definitely evolutionary," Junesio concluded after reviewing thousands of brain scans. "Humans evolved on a world where crisis situations were normal. Their brains adapted to treat extreme pressure not as an emergency condition but as an optimization opportunity. Other species evolved in stable environments," So Young added. "When they face crisis, their biological systems try to return to normal as quickly as possible. But humans evolved where crisis was normal, so their systems optimize for crisis conditions instead." Dr. The Jin was preparing her final report for the Galactic Council. The evidence was overwhelming now. Humans were not just different from other species, they were the opposite of other species when it came to stress response. "We need to reclassify humans completely," she said to her team. "They are not Tier 3 general purpose. They are something entirely new. A species that performs best when conditions are worst? What should we call them?" Jun Seo asked. Dr. The Jin thought about everything she had learned. About humans who solved impossible problems, who succeeded when everyone else failed, who became extraordinary when ordinary was not enough. "Crisis specialists," she said finally. "The galaxy's first and only crisis specialists." As reports continued to arrive from the 3 major missions, the galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was not just another species joining the galactic community. They were something unprecedented, a people who thrived on the very challenges that destroyed others. And soon, everyone would see exactly what humans could accomplish when everything was on the line. The final day of the Andraxian peace negotiations had arrived, and the entire galaxy was watching. 6 days of talks had brought both sides closer to agreement than anyone had thought possible, but critical issues remained unresolved. War Commander Threxnell and his delegation still demanded territorial concessions that the Council could never accept. Ambassador Taeho Kim had not slept in over 30 hours. His translator Eugene Seo was exhausted from switching between 17 different languages during the complex negotiations. Cultural specialist Kyung-Soo Jang had been working around the clock to find compromises between species, whose values seemed completely opposite, but as the final deadline approached and the stakes reached their highest point, something remarkable was happening to the human diplomatic team. Instead of wearing down under the pressure, they were becoming sharper, more creative, and more effective with each passing hour. "We have 6 hours," announced neutral mediator Valthorus at the morning session. "If no agreement is reached by sunset, the peace talks will end permanently and the war will resume." The morning sessions were disasters. Every proposal was rejected, every compromise was refused. The Andraxians walked out twice and the council delegates threatened to leave once. By midday, even the most optimistic observers believed that peace was impossible, but Tejo was not giving up. As the pressure mounted to unbearable levels, his diplomatic instincts were working better than they ever had before. He began to see possibilities that had been invisible just hours earlier. "I need to speak with War Commander Threxnel privately," he announced during the lunch break. "Ambassador Kim," warned Chief Diplomat Altharis, "private negotiations are extremely dangerous at this stage. One wrong word could end all hope for peace." "Trust me," Tejo replied, his eyes bright with exhaustion and determination. The private meeting took place in a small conference room with only Tejo, Eugen, and War Commander Threxnel present. The Andraxian commander was a massive alien, with armor-like skin and eyes that burned like red stars. He had been negotiating from a position of strength all week, knowing that his military forces were winning the war. "What do you want, human?" Threxnel asked in his harsh voice. Tejo looked directly into the commander's burning eyes. "I want to understand what victory means to your people." "Victory means conquest. Victory means dominance. Victory means our enemies bow before our strength." "But what happens after victory?" Tejo pressed. "What does your empire do with conquered territory? How do you benefit from destroying your enemies?" Threxnel seemed surprised by the question. We expand, we grow stronger." "We take what they have." Working with Eugen's perfect translations, Tejo began to lead the Andraxian commander through a series of questions that no previous negotiator had ever asked. Instead of arguing against Andraxian values, he was trying to understand them completely. "Your people value strength above all else," Tejo said. "But which is stronger, ruling over destroyed planets or ruling over thriving planets that serve?" "You willingly explain?" Threxnel demanded. "A conquered enemy gives you only what you can take by force," Tejo continued, his exhausted mind working with perfect clarity. "But an allied partner gives you what they can create." "Which makes an empire more powerful, dead worlds or living worlds that compete to serve you best." For the first time in 6 days, War Commander Threxnel was thinking instead of demanding, while the crucial negotiations continued. Reports were arriving from across the galaxy about the other human missions. Dr. Ji-Hai-An had achieved the impossible on the Corvani homeworld. After working for 8 straight days under extreme pressure, she had not only stopped the Red Plague, but had completely eliminated it. "Cure rate is 100%, reported Corvani Health Minister Vothran II. The Galactic Medical Council. "The disease that has killed our people for a century is gone. Dr. Arm accomplished in 1 week what our best doctors could not do in 100 years. Jihai's revolutionary treatment had been so successful that other worlds were already requesting her help with their own medical crises. The doctor who had been working on simple research just months earlier was now being called the galaxy's greatest medical breakthrough specialist. Engineer Sang-Wook-Oh had achieved similar miraculous results on the 3 failing worlds, working under impossible deadlines as entire planetary systems collapsed around him. He had not just repaired the infrastructure but had completely redesigned it to work better than ever before. "His modular systems are revolutionary," reported System Engineer Korthmul from the Centauri colonies. "Installation time reduced by 70%, efficiency increased by 40%, maintenance requirements cut in half. This human has changed how we think about planetary engineering." Sang-Wook's designs were so successful that the Galactic Engineering Council was already planning to implement them across dozens of other worlds. The maintenance worker who had been fixing air filters was now being hailed as one of the greatest infrastructure innovators in galactic history. Back at Harmony Station, Tejo was making his final diplomatic push. The private negotiations with War Commander Threxnell had revealed something crucial. The Andraxians did not actually want to destroy the Council. They wanted to prove they were stronger than the Council. What if, Tejo suggested as the final session began, instead of conquest, we offered alliance based on Andraxian leadership? The Council delegates looked shocked. Chief Diplomat Altherus stood up immediately. Ambassador Kim, we cannot suggest Andraxian leadership over Council territories. But Tejo was not suggesting surrender. His exhausted mind was working with perfect clarity, seeing diplomatic solutions that months of normal thinking had never revealed. Not leadership over our territories, he explained rapidly. Leadership in specific areas where Andraxian expertise is superior. Military defense coordination, frontier exploration, crisis response management. Areas where their strength makes them natural leaders. Yujin was translating as fast as possible while Kyung-soo provided cultural context for each proposal. The human team was working together with perfect coordination despite days without sleep. War Commander Threxnell was listening carefully. For the first time in the negotiations, he was hearing proposals that acknowledged Andraxian superiority instead of trying to diminish it. You would accept Andraxian military leadership in joint operations? He asked. We would welcome it, Tejo replied. Your people have proven superior tactical abilities. Why would we not want the best commanders leading our combined forces against common threats? The breakthrough came when Tejo proposed the alliance of specialization. Instead of one species trying to control others, each species would lead in areas where they excelled. Andraxians would command military operations. Vorthix would manage mathematical and technological development. Xantharus would handle diplomatic relations with new species. And humans would coordinate crisis response operations. Each species contributes their greatest strength, Tejo explained. No one is conquered, everyone is elevated. War Commander. Threxnell looked around the room at the Council delegates, then back at Tejo. This proposal acknowledges Andraxian superiority in warfare? It celebrates it, Tejo said simply. The agreement was signed as the sun set over Harmony Station. The Andraxian War was over, ended not by military victory but by diplomatic brilliance that had found a way for both sides to claim success. 3 days later, Council Director Seonmi Han stood before the assembled representatives of 847 galactic species to announce the creation of the Human Crisis Response Corps. The galaxy had finally recognized what Dr. the Jinro had discovered through her research: humans were not average at all. When conventional solutions fail, Director Seonmi announced, when pressure reaches impossible levels, when normal capabilities are insufficient, we now know who to call. Humans have proven themselves to be the galaxy's ultimate specialists in achieving the impossible. Fleet Commander Dong-Hyeon Lim was appointed to lead the new Rapid Response Division. Dr. Era Ko established the Crisis Enhancement Research Institute to study and develop human pressure response capabilities. Ambassador Guri Shin became the first human appointed to the Council's inner circle. Dr. the Jinro's research was finally published to universal acclaim. Her paper, Crisis Enhancement Syndrome in Human Neuropsychology, became required reading at every major university in the galaxy. The species that had been dismissed as unremarkable was now understood to be completely unique. Captain Min Ho-young stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride as it orbited Centrion Prime, watching shuttle traffic move between the planet and the massive space stations surrounding it. Somewhere in that traffic were humans heading to their new assignments as crisis specialists, responding to emergencies across the galaxy. He thought about humanity's journey from overlooked newcomers to the species. Everyone called when the impossible needed to be achieved. Other aliens were built for efficiency, stability, and predictable progress. But humans had been forged by evolution itself to thrive when everything else failed. In the distance, Emergency signals were already appearing on the communication channels. A mining disaster in the Rigel system. A diplomatic crisis in the outer colonies. A technological breakdown in the core worlds. Problems that seemed impossible to